Obaapa Christy sat in her luxurious mansion, staring at the glimmering gold ornaments that adorned the walls. Her life was a portrait of wealth, estates sprawling beyond the horizon, vaults filled with gold, and bank accounts swelling with unimaginable riches. Yet her heart was heavy, burdened by the loneliness her fortune had brought her. Every man who crossed her path seemed to see only her wealth, not her. She had given up on love and resigned herself to solitude, but deep down, her soul yearned for companionship. Money is good, but it cannot warm your bed or hold your hand, her late mother used to say, a proverb that now echoed in her mind like an old tune. Every week she drove her sleek car to a small washing bay on Spintex Road in Accra. It was a modest place, not one you'd expect someone of her status to frequent, but Obaapa Christy found solace there. The reason? A young man named Sarkodie. Sarkodie was unlike any man she had met. Tall, dark and unassuming, he worked tirelessly at the washing bay, treating each car with care and precision as though it were his own. He was humble and respectful, always flashing a genuine smile. Whenever Obaapa brought her car, he would take his time, meticulously washing and polishing it, ensuring it sparkled as if it were brand new. She noticed how he never complained, even under the scorching sun, and how his colleagues respected him. For some reason, she found herself looking forward to their brief interactions. "Madame, your car is ready," Sarkodie would say with a polite bow, handing her the keys. "Thank you, Sarkodie," she would reply, slipping him a generous tip. "Keep it. You deserve it." "God bless you, madam," he would respond, his voice filled with gratitude, but never lingering beyond the bounds of formality. What Sarkodie didn't know was that Obaapa Christy admired his humility. She would often sit in her car, watching him work, secretly wishing he would look at her as more than just a customer. But he never did. Sarkodie saw her as someone from a different world, a world he could never enter. One day, after months of silent yearning, Obaapa decided to break the ice. As Sarkodie handed her the keys, she hesitated, her heart pounding. "Sarkodie," she began softly, "why do you work so hard here? Don't you have bigger dreams?" He looked up at her, surprised. "Madam, I believe hard work is the ladder to success. My father used to say, if you fetch water with patience, even a leaking pot will fill. I am saving to go to school one day." His words struck her. She saw a man of substance, a man who valued hard work and integrity. Her admiration grew deeper, but still, Sarkodie maintained his respectful distance. Weeks passed, and her visits became more frequent. One day, after he had washed her car, she mustered the courage to say what had been in her heart. "Sarkodie," she said, her voice trembling, "do you ever think that people from different worlds can find something in common?" He looked at her, confused but intrigued. "Madam, are you speaking of us?" "Yes," she whispered, her cheeks burning. Sarkodie froze, his mind racing. "Madame, I am just a simple man. I have nothing to offer someone like you." Obaapa Christy drove away from the washing bay, her heart heavy with disappointment. Every visit seemed to deepen her longing, but Sarkodie's humility and reserved nature made her feel invisible. She couldn't shake the feeling that her wealth was a barrier, a gilded cage that kept true love at bay. Still, she resolved not to give up. "A determined heart can carve a path through the hardest rock," she whispered to herself as she gripped the steering wheel tighter. On one of her visits, she brought Sarkodie a pack of fried rice and chicken. Handing it to him with a warm smile, she said, "You work so hard, Sarkodie. Please, have this. You deserve a good meal." Sarkodie, ever respectful, took the food and said, "Thank you, madam. God bless you." But as usual, he kept his distance. He ate the food alone, ignoring the curious looks and whispers from his colleagues. Later, some of his friends approached him, their faces twisted with jealousy. "Sarkodie, don't fool yourself," one of them sneered. "Do you think a woman like Obaapa Christy can ever love a poor guy like you? She's just being kind because she pities you." Another chimed in, "Or maybe she loves you. Why else would a woman like her come here so often? You should go for it, man." But Sarkodie, true to his character, said nothing. He neither entertained their gossip nor allowed their words to influence him. Deep down, he admired Obaapa Christy's kindness, but he couldn't imagine someone of her status genuinely falling for him. He was just a car washer, a man struggling to make ends meet. One day, Obaapa Christy decided to take a bold step. After Sarkodie finished washing her car, she approached him, her heart pounding. "Sarkodie," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I'd like to invite you to dinner tomorrow evening. If you're interested, I'll come and pick you up." Sarkodie looked at her, startled. He hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Finally, he nodded. "Thank you, madam. If it will make you happy, I'll come." The next day, Obaapa Christy arrived at the washing bay, her heart racing with anticipation. Sarkodie stepped out to meet her, dressed in a faded shirt, worn-out trousers, and scuffed shoes. He looked uncomfortable, his hands fidgeting as he tried to avoid her gaze. Obaapa Christy smiled warmly. "You look fine, Sarkodie. Come, let's go." In her luxurious car, the two drove in silence at first. Sarkodie's discomfort was palpable, but Obaapa Christy broke the tension. "You know," she said softly, "it's not about what you wear or what you have, it's about who you are. And you, Sarkodie, are one of the most genuine people I've ever met." Sarkodie glanced at her, his expression a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, madam. But I am just a simple man. I don't think I deserve this." She smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Call me Christy, not madam. And you deserve more than you think, Sarkodie. You have a heart of gold, and that's worth more to me than anything." They arrived at a cozy, upscale restaurant. Sarkodie felt out of place, but Obaapa Christy made every effort to put him at ease. They talked about their lives, their dreams, and their struggles. For the first time, Sarkodie saw her not as a wealthy woman, but as a kind soul, longing for love. As the evening progressed, Sarkodie's walls began to crumble. He realized that Obaapa Christy's affection was genuine, and his heart softened toward her. When they left the restaurant, she turned to him and said, "Sarkodie, I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you except your time, your kindness, and your heart. That's all I need." Sarkodie was taken aback by Obaapa Christy's words. He couldn't believe someone of her status had just professed such admiration for him. As they left the restaurant and she offered to drop him at his home, a wave of anxiety swept over him. He fidgeted, his voice low, as he said, "Madam, Christy, just drop me at the roadside. I'll find my way home." Obaapa looked at him with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Why?" "It's late, Sarkodie. I can't let you walk alone in the dark." He hesitated, unsure of how to explain. It's okay. My place isn't far from here." But Obaapa was insistent. "Sarkodie, I've come this far. Let me drop you at your house. Please." Left with no choice, Sarkodie reluctantly directed her to his home. As they approached, his shame grew heavier. He lived in an uncompleted building with no lights, no proper windows, and only a thin mattress on the floor. The windows were covered with mosquito nets he had patched together, and his few belongings were neatly stacked in one corner of the room. Obaapa stepped out of the car and took in the scene. Sarkodie hung his head low, expecting ridicule or pity, but what she said next shocked him. "You're stronger than most people I know," she said softly. "Living here in these conditions and still working so hard and saving for your future. This shows strength, Sarkodie. I respect you even more now." Her words brought a lump to his throat. For the first time, someone saw past his poverty and acknowledged his efforts. He managed a weak smile as he thanked her, and she drove away, leaving him to sit in his dark, quiet room, replaying her words over and over. 2 weeks later, Obaapa invited Sarkodie to a birthday party for one of her close friends. Despite his hesitation, she assured him it would be fine. "Just be yourself," she said. "That's all I need." When the day came, Sarkodie arrived in his modest attire, his best shirt and trousers, though worn and far from the luxury that surrounded him. The party was held in an opulent mansion, with guests dressed in designer outfits and adorned with jewelry that screamed wealth. The moment Sarkodie walked in, heads turned and whispers began to spread. "Who is he?" one guest murmured. "Did someone invite their driver?" another sneered. Some openly mocked him, laughing behind their glasses of champagne. "Obaapa? Are you serious? Why would you bring someone like this to a place like this?" But Obaapa stood her ground, her voice firm and clear. "Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Gold is often found in mud and dirty places, but when it's refined, it becomes one of the most beautiful things in the world." Her words silenced the room, but Sarkodie was overwhelmed with embarrassment. He wanted to disappear, to escape the judgmental stares and whispers. Quietly, he got up and began to leave. Obaapa noticed and followed him outside. "Sarkodie," she called, her tone gentle but firm. "Where are you going?" "I don't belong here, Christy," he said, his voice trembling. "Look at me. Look at them. We're not the same. I'm just embarrassing you." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with empathy. "Sarkodie, don't let their words get to you. I brought you here because you matter to me. They may not see what I see, but I know who you are, and that's all that counts. Let them talk. Their opinions don't define us." Her words steadied him, and though he still felt out of place, he stayed until the end of the party. When it was over, she drove him home as usual. As they reached his uncompleted building, Sarkodie turned to her, his voice soft but determined. "Christy, I don't know why you see something in me, but I'll work hard. I'll make sure I become someone you'll always be proud of." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "You already are, Sarkodie. You already are." One evening, Sarkodie sat in his small, dimly lit room, staring at his phone. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he hesitated. He had been thinking about Obaapa Christy all day. Her kindness, her smile, and the way she treated him with respect filled his thoughts. For weeks, he had wanted to reach out, but fear of rejection held him back. Tonight, however, he mustered the courage and typed out a message. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm just checking up on you. Have a blissful good night." As soon as he hit send, his heart began to race. "What if she thinks I'm being too forward?" he thought, pacing the room nervously. But when his phone buzzed a few minutes later with her reply, his heart nearly stopped. "Thanks for the care," she wrote, with a smiley face emoji. That simple reply touched her heart in ways she hadn't expected. As she read the message, a warmth spread through her. Sarkodie's sincerity was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. She lay in bed that night, smiling to herself, thinking about the man who had sent her those thoughtful words. From then on, their communication grew. Sarkodie would often call her to check in, and their phone conversations became the highlight of her evenings. They laughed, shared their thoughts, and grew closer, their bond deepening with every passing day. Despite their growing connection, Sarkodie had never visited Obaapa's house. One day, as she stopped by the washing bay, she handed him an envelope containing a significant sum of money. "Sarkodie," she said with a gentle smile, "I want you to use this to further your university education. You've worked hard, and you deserve this chance." Sarkodie's hands trembled as he opened the envelope and saw the amount. Tears filled his eyes, and he fell to his knees. "Obaapa Christy," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you. You've done more for me than anyone ever has. I will never forget this." From that day forward, Obaapa Christy became his unwavering support. She financed his tuition, his living expenses, and even his daily needs. She would call him often, reminding him to stay focused and promising to stand by him no matter what. At the university, Sarkodie's appearance transformed. Dressed in new clothes and with a confident air, he turned heads wherever he went. Many of the female students admired him, but he remained loyal to Obaapa Christy. He knew how much she had sacrificed for him and vowed never to betray her trust. During one school vacation, Obaapa invited him to spend the holidays at her home. When he arrived, he was stunned. Her house was a sprawling mansion, adorned with opulence he had only seen in movies. The marble floors gleamed, the chandeliers sparkled, and the sheer grandeur left him speechless. "Sarkodie," she said, noticing his shock. "This is just a house. What matters is the people who fill it with love." He looked at her with admiration. "Christy, I never knew you lived like this. Yet you've been so humble and kind to me. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." She smiled warmly. "You don't need to repay me, Sarkodie. Just fulfill your dreams and live a life that makes you happy. That's all I ask." From that moment, Sarkodie's resolve strengthened. He knew that his success would not just be for himself, but for the woman who had believed in him when no one else did. Their bond grew even stronger, built not on wealth or status, but on genuine love, trust, and gratitude. When Obaapa Christy led Sarkodie up the grand staircase of her luxurious mansion, he followed her in awe, the soft carpets muffling his hesitant footsteps. She opened the door to a master bedroom that seemed almost too perfect to be real. The room was spacious, with a king-sized bed draped in elegant linens, walls adorned with tasteful art, and shelves stocked with designer men's clothing. Sneakers of all styles lined one side, while rows of boxes, perfumes, and accessories filled the other. "This is your room," Christy said with a warm smile, watching Sarkodie's reaction closely. "Everything here belongs to you." Sarkodie stood frozen, his eyes welling up with tears. He turned to Christy, his voice breaking. "Christy, you've taken me from grass to grace. I never imagined I'd experience such kindness, let alone from someone like you. May God bless you abundantly." Christy, deeply moved by his gratitude, placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've earned it, Sarkodie. Your humility and hard work inspire me every day. I'm happy to see you happy." Sarkodie knelt, overcome by emotion, and thanked her repeatedly. For him, this was not just about material wealth. It was the love, care, and belief Christy had shown him that filled his heart with joy. When it was time for Sarkodie to return to school, Christy surprised him yet again. She handed him the keys to a brand new car and an envelope containing a large sum of money for his upkeep. Sarkodie, tears streaming down his face, hugged her tightly. "I don't know what I've done to deserve this," he said, his voice trembling. "Christy, I promise to make you proud. I'll never forget what you've done for me." "Just focus on your studies," she replied with a smile. "Your success is all I want." With Christy's unwavering support, Sarkodie excelled at university. A few years later, he graduated as a top-tier engineer and landed a prestigious job at the Volta River Authority, earning a significant salary. Despite his newfound success, Sarkodie chose to stay with Christy in her home, where their bond grew even stronger. They ate together, shared stories, and created memories filled with love and laughter. One day, Sarkodie suggested they visit the washing bay where he used to work. Christy agreed, and together they drove there in his new car. As they stepped out, the sight of Sarkodie, dressed in a sharp suit and exuding confidence, left his former colleagues speechless. "Is that Sarkodie?" one of them whispered, unable to believe his eyes. "He looks like a completely different person," another murmured, their voices filled with shock and envy. The very people who had doubted him and mocked his relationship with Christy now stood in stunned silence. Some looked ashamed, while others avoided his gaze entirely. Sarkodie walked up to them, a humble smile on his face. "It's good to see you all again," he said, shaking hands with a few of them. He made no mention of their past ridicule, choosing instead to show kindness. Christy watched proudly from a distance. One of the men, unable to contain his curiosity, asked, "Sarkodie, how did you do it? How did you go from here to this?" Sarkodie glanced at Christy and smiled. "It's all thanks to her," he said, pointing toward her. "She believed in me when no one else did. She saw something in me that even I couldn't see." As they left the washing bay, Sarkodie turned to Christy and said, "Today, I realized something. It's not just about where you start in life, but who stands by you on the journey. You've been my rock, Christy, and I'll forever be grateful." Christy, beaming with pride, replied, "Sarkodie, you've shown the world that humility and hard work can change everything, and I'm glad I could be part of your story." Together they drove away, their hearts full, knowing they had silenced the doubters and proven that love, trust, and determination could conquer all. Christy sat at her desk late one evening, her vision blurring as exhaustion weighed heavily on her. She reached for her bag to head home, but an unfamiliar weakness coursed through her body. Her heart pounded erratically, her legs gave way, and she collapsed into her chair, unable to move. Panic set in as she fumbled for her phone and dialed for an ambulance. By the time she arrived at the hospital, her world had already begun to crumble. After a series of tests, the doctor entered the room, his face solemn. "Miss Christy," he began gently, "you've been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS. It's an autoimmune condition where the immune system attacks the protective covering of your nerves. Unfortunately, it's a permanent condition, and it may progress to the point where you won't be able to walk again." Christy's world shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she sat in silence, grappling with the gravity of the news. She had always been strong, independent, and in control. Now she faced a reality she couldn't change. When Sarkodie visited her in the hospital later that day, she broke down completely. "Sarkodie," she sobbed, "this isn't the life I wanted. I've lost everything. My strength, my freedom, my dreams. How can I expect you to stay by my side?" Sarkodie knelt beside her, his own eyes glistening with tears. "Christy," he said firmly, "I didn't love you for what you could do or what you had. I loved you for who you are, and nothing, not this condition, not anything, will change that. I promise to stand by you, and I mean it." Christy, though comforted by his words, secretly feared that he would eventually grow tired of her condition and leave. But Sarkodie's actions proved otherwise. He devoted himself entirely to her care, refusing to hire a maid even when she insisted. "Christy," he told her one day, "you've spent your life helping others, including me. Now it's my turn to take care of you." Whenever they went out, Sarkodie would push her wheelchair with pride, even at grand events where people stared or whispered. He would hold her hand, lean down to speak softly to her, and ensure she was comfortable and cared for. His love for her was unwavering, and it adorned her life like a precious jewel, even in her darkest moments. But life wasn't done testing them. A year after her diagnosis, Christie's company declared bankruptcy. What had once been a thriving empire crumbled under the weight of mounting debts. She was forced to sell her properties to cover the losses, one by one, watching her luxurious lifestyle fade away. The sprawling mansion, the expensive cars, and the golden assets, everything she had worked so hard to build, was gone. Christy cried bitterly, feeling as if fate had stripped her of everything she had ever valued. Sarkodie, she wept one evening as they sat together. I've lost it all. I have nothing left to give you. Nothing. But Sarkodie took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. Christy, he said, his voice steady, you still have what matters most. Your heart. You taught me that wealth isn't about gold or money. It's about love, kindness, and resilience. As long as we have each other, we have everything. His words, though simple, were like balm to her aching soul. Even as the world seemed to crumble around her, Christy realized that Sarkodie's love was her true fortune. Together, they rebuilt their lives, not with money, but with the strength of their bond and the hope that even in the face of adversity, they would endure. Sarkodie rented a modest but cozy apartment for himself and Christy, determined to create a comfortable and loving home for her, despite her condition. He furnished the space with care, ensuring it was wheelchair accessible and equipped with everything she might need. Every evening, after work, he would sit by her side, holding her hand and reminding her of his unwavering commitment. Christy, he would say softly, you made me the man I am today. I will never betray you, no matter what. For better or worse, I'm here to stay. His words brought tears to Christy's eyes. Though she cherished his love, a small part of her feared he might one day leave her for someone better. But Sarkodie's actions spoke louder than words. He cooked for her, cleaned, and made sure she was always comfortable. He would massage her legs to ease her pain and sit with her during her emotional lows, always reassuring her that she was more than enough for him. One evening, as they sat in their living room, Sarkodie knelt before Christy, holding her hands in his. She looked at him, puzzled. Christy, he began, his voice trembling with emotion. You've given me everything. Your trust, your love, your belief in me when no one else did. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me wasn't misplaced. Will you marry me? Christy's heart raced, and tears filled her eyes. She had never expected him to propose, especially considering her condition. Sarkodie, she whispered, her voice cracking, are you sure? I'm not the same as I used to be. He smiled and shook his head. For better or worse, Christy. Even if I had nothing, even if I was still working at the washing bay, I'd choose you every time. Through her tears, she nodded. Yes, Sarkodie, I'll marry you. Their engagement quickly became a topic of gossip. People who didn't know their story mocked Sarkodie relentlessly. Why is he with a crippled woman? Some sneered. He could find someone able-bodied, someone who could give him a better life. Even some of Sarkodie's old colleagues from the washing bay tried to convince him to leave her. Sarkodie, one said, you're successful now. You can do better. Don't waste your life on someone like her. But Sarkodie was unmoved. True love doesn't depend on what someone can do for you, he replied firmly. Christy gave me her heart when I had nothing. I'll stand by her, no matter what anyone says. 3 months later, Sarkodie organized a luxurious wedding that left everyone stunned. Despite their modest living, he spared no expense to ensure the day was perfect for Christy. The grand venue was adorned with flowers, and the guest list included family, friends, and even Sarkodie's former colleagues who came out of curiosity. Christy, seated in her wheelchair, was a vision of beauty in her flowing white gown. As she was wheeled down the aisle, the guests whispered in awe at her radiance. Sarkodie stood at the altar, his eyes filled with tears as he watched her approach. When it was time for the vows, Sarkodie spoke with conviction. I, Sarkodie, take you, Christy, as my wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and stand by you in sickness and in health, for better or worse, for as long as we both shall live. You are my heart, my strength, and my greatest blessing. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling with emotion. When it was Christy's turn, she began her vows, her voice filled with gratitude. Sarkodie, you are my miracle. You stood by me when I had nothing to give, and you've taught me what true love means. I promise to love you, cherish you, and stand by you for as long as I live. As she spoke, her hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Suddenly, as if moved by a force greater than herself, she pushed herself up. The room fell silent as Christy stood on trembling legs, tears streaming down her face. The hall erupted in applause and tears as Christy took a step forward, her vows completed. Sarkodie caught her in a warm embrace, overwhelmed with emotion. Christy stood at the altar, gripping the microphone, her voice steady but filled with emotion. The room was silent as every eye focused on her, eager to understand the truth behind her shocking revelation. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I know many of you are confused, and some of you are probably wondering why I did what I did. Let me tell you my story. After my parents passed away, they left me a fortune, wealth, properties, and a thriving company. But with that wealth came a painful lesson. Many people only cared about what I could give them, not who I was. Every man I dated saw me as a means to an end, a stepping stone to riches. I was used, betrayed, and left heartbroken time and again." She paused, glancing at Sarkodie, who stood beside her, his face a mixture of shock and emotion. "Then I met Sarkodie. He was different, humble, hard-working, and genuine. But after all I'd been through, I couldn't trust so easily. Even though I admired him, I had to be sure. So I decided to invest in him, to see if his love for me was real." Her voice broke as she continued. "I helped Sarkodie through school, gave him everything he needed to become the successful engineer he is today. But deep inside, I was scared. Scared that when he achieved success, he would leave me like so many others had done before. That fear consumed me, and I knew I had to be sure of his heart." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "That's when I decided to test him. I pretended to be crippled and faked the loss of my wealth. I wanted to see if Sarkodie would stand by me when I had nothing left to give. Would he care for me when I couldn't offer him the luxury or the life he now had? Would he stay or walk away now that he didn't need me anymore?" Her gaze softened as she turned fully towards Sarkodie. "But Sarkodie, you proved me wrong in the most beautiful way. You stayed. You took care of me, carried me through my darkest days, and loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You showed me that your heart is pure and your love is true. I'm sorry for doubting you, but I had to know. And now I'm standing here, a woman overwhelmed with gratitude, because I found the man of my dreams." Sarkodie's eyes filled with tears as the crowd erupted in applause, some wiping away their own tears. He stepped forward, taking her hands in his. "Christy," he said softly, "I never loved you for your wealth or what you could give me. I loved you for your kindness, your heart, and the way you made me believe in myself. I would have stood by you no matter what." 5 years after their unforgettable wedding, Sarkodie and Christy were living a blissful life. They were now proud parents of 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl, who brought even more joy into their lives. Their love had only grown stronger, a testament to the power of mutual care and sacrifice. Sarkodie often reflected on their journey, realizing how their love had been tested and refined through trials. Christy, in turn, cherished every moment, knowing she had found a man who loved her not for her wealth but for her heart. True love is selfless and pure. It sees beyond flaws, poverty, or hardship. It sacrifices without expecting anything in return, yet it restores hope and brings unimaginable joy. It's a blessing money cannot buy, and when given freely, it transforms lives. To all viewers, remember that love is reciprocal. When someone gives you genuine love, give it back wholeheartedly. True love doesn't depend on material possessions or external circumstances. It thrives in care, sacrifice, and mutual respect. True love isn't about what someone can give you. It's about standing by each other in every season of life. Love that endures hardship, sacrifice, and trials is the purest form of connection. When love is given to you, cherish it, honor it, and give it back. Love isn't about riches or appearances. It's about care, trust, and unwavering support. If you're blessed to find such love, nurture it. And if you're blessed to give such love, know that you've given the greatest gift anyone can receive. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Anansi Web of Tales for more heartwarming and inspiring stories. Please like, share, and comment, and let us know where you're watching from. Stay tuned for more captivating tales, and may you always find and give the love that transforms lives.